from Putin's point of view, the risk is that this becomes a win-win scenario. Either he gets a peace that actually allows him to hold on to the 20% of Ukrainian territory he's already stolen, or if Trump really does get tired, he may just simply walk away in the sense of revoking the support for Ukraine and such like, at which point Ukraine loses its main backer.
First up, President Trump has said that he could, and I quote here, take a pass on trying to secure a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia if there is no enthusiasm from either side.
My whole life has been one big negotiation, and I know when people are playing us, and I know when they're not, and I have to see an enthusiasm to want to end it. And I think I see that enthusiasm. I think I see it from both sides.
Do you think Russia's
But you're going to know soon.
Do you think Russia's playing you?
No, nobody's playing me. I'm trying to help. This was Biden's war, by the way. By me getting involved, they'll say, oh, Trump. This is not Trump's war. This is Biden. This is a war that should have never happened.
Now, yesterday, Vice President J.D. Vance, who met with Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni in Rome, told reporters that the White House is optimistic that they can fully bring this war to a close. Well, I'm joined now by Mark Galeotti, historian, director of the consultancy Mayak Intelligence and columnist for the Sunday Times, who's been writing about the ongoing peace negotiations for tomorrow's paper. Mark, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, a pleasure.
Your piece just went online, and it's a fantastic piece. But essentially, what you're kind of coming to the conclusion of is Moscow, Kyiv, Washington and Brussels have all sort of dug in, and now we seem to be playing a game of who's going to blink first.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, for all kinds of different reasons, no one at the moment is willing to make the kind of moves which would create a positive peace. And I think this may be one of the reasons why Trump is, and indeed his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, are both more or less saying, look, we're coming close to a decision date. 30th of April is, after all, when Trump's first 100 days comes to an end, which is quite a symbolically powerful moment in an American presidency. And look, it may be that Trump is hoping to basically shock some of the various other players into making some moves, or it might be that he just is indeed just losing interest. He's not seeing the kind of quick, instant, glorious result that he seemed to imagined he could bring. And therefore he's bored and he's pivoting to whether it's the Iran deal or something else.
I mean, we heard a journalist ask Donald Trump, a rather courageous question, I thought, have you been played by Vladimir Putin? What's your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about our least favourite duets, there is a degree to which it is clear that Putin has known how to play Trump. I mean, Putin, he's not quite the sort of grand geopolitical mastermind that some people make out. But what he is good precisely at is identifying people's weaknesses and playing on them. And clearly Trump has one or two of them. And I think up to this point, what we have seen really is Putin providing all kinds of airy promises of, pots of gold at the end of different rainbows. Nothing actually concrete. Now, it may be that that's enough with Trump, that all you need to do is promise some kind of glorious future payback and that'll work. But there are certainly people around Trump who have been whispering in his ear saying, look, there comes a point when you have to conclude that this is not serious. But even so, look, from Putin's point of view, the risk is that this becomes a win-win scenario. Either he gets a peace that actually allows him to hold on to the 20% of Ukrainian territory he's already stolen, or if Trump really does get tired, he may just simply walk away in the sense of revoking the support for Ukraine and such like, at which point Ukraine loses its main backer. So at the moment, it's always very hard to predict things, but it does seem that Trump has been put into a position in which, from Putin's point of view, doesn't have that much to lose.
You do describe some cracks appearing in the Kremlin, some people insisting that Putin should take this chance to end the war on favourable terms. But it seems that perhaps Vladimir Putin sees an opportunity here to just push a little bit further.
Yeah, I mean, this is always the risk, that the sort of the one more push fallacy. We saw it in World War I. That sense of we're in a good position now, but let's launch another attack, and then we'll be even better. And then, of course, another 10,000 of your men die in the battle, and you extend forward by a foot. In this case, it does seem to be that Putin has this idea that what he might be able to get out of the deal is not just a deal that suits him over Ukraine, but something that actually has much wider implications about kind of restructuring the whole security architecture of Europe or something like that. Frankly, I think unrealistically grand. But from Putin's point of view, this is kind of a one-shot opportunity to really make a grand victory that will sort of establish his place in the history books, which we know matters to him. So he's willing to take risks.
Mark, what about the minerals deal with Ukraine? You also look at that in detail. Has Kyiv learned to deal with Trump a little bit better than those initial approaches, which some people have described almost as bullying from the US, almost extortionate? Others were describing them. What has Kyiv agreed to, and what may we see? I think in one of the press conferences, Trump had said that there might be some sort of deal signed this week on Thursday.
Yes, well, what we've seen signed is what's called a memorandum of understanding, which is just a very, very preliminary, very loose sort of piece of paper that just simply says, we will have a deal. And we have the Ukrainian Prime Minister, Denis Shmyhal, who is actually heading to Washington this coming week to try and actually nail down the terms. Now, look, let's be perfectly honest. This is an incredibly extortionate, almost colonial deal that the Americans are pushing for, which will essentially mean that they will be able to cream off probably about 50% of the revenue from Ukraine's subsoil minerals, oil, gas, infrastructure, and so forth for years to come, because it's in the name of paying America back for its aid. But the point is, from the Ukrainians' point of view, they have little real scope. They need to try and keep America engaged. And therefore, having tried firstly to appeal to America's sense of fair play with the outcome that we know, they've now had to realize that at the court of King Trump, you actually have to, in effect, buy your or rent your support. And so that's what they're having to do. It's an ugly situation, but it demonstrates that, frankly, the Ukrainians have come to realize that these are the new politics.
Mark, you bring the piece to an end by putting forward what essentially may happen if no one does anything, if you like. We can sleepwalk into a version that you describe, because I'm going to let you describe it yourself, of a sort of a ceasefire where, as you say in your last line, a mutual dissatisfaction is often the price of peace. What would this look like?
Well, what we've been getting from hints, and so we should stress this is just purely from informal briefings and the like, but that the kind of fallback deal that the Americans have outlined, for example, when Secretary of State Rubio and Trump's emissary Steve Witkoff were in Paris, is what you'd almost think of as a kind of an open-ended ceasefire. So the Russians remain in control of the territory that they occupy, but they stop advancing. That Ukraine signs the mineral deal, but it does get a certain, at least a share of the Russian assets that are frozen in the West. It's $300 billion worth, so it's no small amount, to help to reconstruct it. That Ukraine is locked out of NATO, which is frankly wasn't going to happen anyway, but on the other hand, it retains its sovereignty. Just enough, the idea is, for each country to be able to say that it has kind of got a victory of sorts, even though no one really wins. Now, the thing is, I mean, if I were advising Putin, I'd tell him to take this deal. I'm not convinced he will. Likewise, the Ukrainians may well not feel that this is what they need because they need security guarantees. So I'm not quite sure if this is the case, if this is a genuine American initiative, or whether they're just setting up a deal that they know that everyone will say no to, so that then they can just throw up their hands and say, well, we tried, yeah. we did our best. But to go back to what Trump himself said, when it comes down to it, these people don't want peace. What can you do? And to try and salvage a shred of dignity as they withdraw. So, one way or the other, and, we're dealing with all kinds of imponderables here, not least because what Trump decides today, he may well change his mind on tomorrow. But at the moment, it does look as if the period up to the 30th of April could well be truly pivotal for this ghastly war.